I'm not even going to try to compete with all that's going on, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Thank you so much, Steele, Jenny, and Lisa, for putting this together. Thank you so much, Avils, for having us at the last minute. And thank you to the Friends of the UW-Madison Library for making this reading series possible. So I thought I'd begin with a poem that takes place in a very different Egypt where I was in 2006. Egypt Journal, Christmas at the Great Pyramid. You say the desert wind is romantic, stripping sand from the pyramids and lifting little red pom-poms from the camel saddles. But behind us, a skyline of smashed houses. Narrow alleys where women peer through keyhole eyes and fill gaunt stores with their perfumes. It's true, I think too much about the shape hidden lips make to consider the price of colored beads. But how can I help but imagine when sand, its slow as salt, the way it seeps into ears and eyes and mouth makes me insatiable. In the museum, the pharaoh's molars look like blunt stumps worn down, a gradual giving over to gum and bone. If Egypt is the mother of the world, then all of her children must be Coriolanus, wearing their scars the way brides wear henna, proud and punch-drunk, half in awe of their hard-earned adornment. But look, here comes the tour bus in a crowd of Thai tourists in red t-shirts. Pretty girls from the Gulf want the camels to gallop, please, so yalla. There are many kinds of deprivation. For example, the whole world tastes like sand today. In this country, it is illegal to say, I believe in evolution. And if you say it, there is no pendulum, no bear bulb swinging across the interrogation room, and sometimes there isn't even a body. Maybe a little boy waits in a makeshift apartment on the rooftop of a downtown building this morning, watching a single cloud undress over the Nile. Like the reed our guide drags in the air over the sand to show us a cobra's undulating path. Because snakes are symbols of luck and magic here. The cobra curls around the cooking pot, and it isn't hard to understand why what's deadly isn't so awful after all. Once you accept the thing slithering in the yard of the mind. Like the sketches of venereal diseases in the doctor's office in Khan Khalili, blisters and sores as dangerous as Israeli missiles, they say, each one an argument against lust, which is a kind of curiosity. And maybe this is the story of wanting to know, but enjoying the details of deprivation. So when the camel sits down and I have to lean back and tug on the reins to keep from falling, it is hard not to laugh the way I laughed once during a wedding sermon when the priest said, "Only the stupid man builds his house on the sand." I want to remember you with your ankles crossed around the hump of a camel, explaining that the Bedouin call them ships of the desert, even as you send text messages in 3 languages to your friends in Brooklyn. I am laughing later because later all that will remain of this place are the sores blooming beneath the camel's saddle, the bomb mirrors they swept beneath the car each time we returned to the hotel, and what your father said when we were introduced, the part you didn't translate, which I understood, Ayun Ota, cat eyes, and later when you explained his question, how can you trust a woman with eyes like an animal that is loyal to no one? Okay, I guess I'll change pace a bit. This is called a short genealogy of power tools. Okay, anyway, I just had like anxiety about a child being present, but it's okay. Hi, Felix.
He's 5. It's probably,
We'll hope. Okay, sorry. Earmuffs. Okay. There was this shed behind the prefab house where I straddled a boy named Boomer on his father's John Deere. Digging my hands into the jagged lightning bolts shaved into the back of his head, I liked to pretend they were power tools. My hands blasting his body open so I could crawl inside and make it mine. But afterward, when the mulch smelled feral and the wheelbarrow looked like an exhausted animal and I had to pee, there was just this total annoyance with being back in my body, with being a person of dumb, particular needs, suddenly waving hello to his mother, who called the bathroom a powder room, which was a sad suburban lie that cut me anyway. And the soap was sharp, and the shower curtain was sharp, and I was wearing a white sweatshirt. And the face in the mirror was the worst kind of moralist. It said, "You cannot invent a thing with wires and blades and call it a coronation." I want to tell you this without saying that my mother's car was already in the driveway, that shoulder pads and brass buttons made her look like a man, that when she squinted and said, "Stop being so goddamn sullen," she was one. And breathing became this nameless, miraculous crime. I was sudden and famous. Adjectives attach themselves or they do not. Everyone knows this. Here, barred owls brawl in the trimmed trees. The man I love sputters and twitches in his sleep. This is a domestic scene. This is a death scene. All barbers were butchers once. Everyone knows this. How would you describe a gutted chicken? How does a razor hum against the back of your neck? When he wakes up, I am throwing his power tools in the pool, and the lining's torn, and the skimmer's clogged, and I am a sick, crazy bitch. When he wakes up, I am straddling the rocking horse I've carved with confidence from the trunk of an oak. I had this summer, I think it was after I finished my comp exams and I didn't want to do anything, so I just rewatched every David Lynch film, show, whatever. So this kind of came out of that. Sweet reader, there is much I want to accomplish since my David Lynch film marathon, so kindly pull up a chair. Hold still while I taser you with a heraldic dwarf in a ring of fire, or the aerial assault of piss on a dry dirt road after a pot of coffee. Sit back while I drill calm holes into your skull, then buy you breakfast every day for 7 years. The two of us hunched in a booth at Bob's Big Boy, where you'll have what I'm having. A chocolate milkshake and 4, 5, 6 links of sausage. You never leave a tip, reader. Do you prefer to stare at the formica like a lead-poisoned child? Or watch your shake thin in its incongruous goblet while you cover the napkins with childhood phobias in green ink? You who invite me to cut and filter and scramble your nighttime screams, your bald hands a clump of Band-Aids in a health club shower, the panther crouching in the brush of your family photograph, until you wake up one morning and plant the memory of your terrible grandmother in a pot beside the kitchen sink, where she sprouts and force feeds you anchovies again. The house is stuffed with plastic lampshades. There are carnivorous fish blowing bubbles in a tank. Throw your last $20 into a shopping mall fountain. Let your secret selves embrace like brain-damaged boxers in the ring. As we enter the chlorinated water together, the coins of all your drowned wishes shifting like oxidized treasure beneath our feet. A brief affair that ends with an image from Frida Kahlo. Oh, I should tell you before, this poem references the word chilango, which is a derogatory term that Mexicans who aren't from Mexico City use for city people. Because into every life some sudden lover must slough like sand through a wet bathing suit. Let the burns and abrasions blare reckless witness to the kiss slap of barnacles bearing into rocks, and the ghost crab's horny scurrying when he steps outside to smoke. So right, rifle through his bag to find prayer cards folded accordion style, and a couple's therapy reminder on which he'd written, "The stars are bullet points." Admit this sentence has a crude clarity you often miss in poems. And if you must, marvel at the way he explains the origin of the word chilango, which has something to do with the blush of a gutted fish or the absurdity of wearing flip-flops in deep sand. Not altogether artless, not altogether unworth, while you are growing ephemeral and alone in interlude. But you are trying to exist in the moment for once. So back to his eyes, which remind you of a selva tree shedding raunchy sheets in spring wind, and a friend from Alabama who once told you of the sheer fabulosity of fucking on a fresh bale of cotton. Everything ends. Sex, poem, harvest. Everything ends as the airplane lands in an ice storm, as across the aisle two Italians bask in the glow of sexual tourism, bouncing twin cartons of cigarettes under their arms. Everything ends, as in the distance between Baltimore and Cancun, which is a 3-hour flight, but really. Remember that first scorch of sunlight because you were not sleeping. Remember at dusk the sandflies, the last tragic batch of groping manufactured in some maquiladora of star-crossed orgasms. Because you are going to slough it off like an emery board until all that's left is the dust the wind makes off with. You who live by the thumb, wreck it all with one thrust. Craft codices to the shoddy light two bodies make beneath mosquito netting, and the sand-swept suitcase, skeletons suspended over the sad bed, wired with firecrackers. Violent agreement of explosion and encore.